Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be throwing a single cylinder ARB air compressor on my JK. I got this with a kit for my lockers. So I got to get this on there so I can get those lockers in. Now, I'm going to be doing this with a Motobuilt bracket. It was one of the cheaper ones that I was able to find. It was also kind of one that was able to get here the quickest. I went a little back and forth on if I wanted to run it in the engine bay or not. I just kind of decided that it was going to be a little bit quicker, easier for me to just run it in there because it's going to make wiring really quick. I have a relay box for my switch pod in there, so it'll make the wiring a breeze. And you know, the Motobuilt bracket, the way that it sits, I'm kind of happy with how it's going to be situated in the engine bay. So let's go ahead and get this started. It should be a pretty quick project today. First thing I gotta do is I gotta get the two 13mm nuts off either side of the master cylinder so we can get that bracket put on. Now it's pretty easy. All we're gonna do is slip this over. We want it to go in towards the engine. So it's just gonna slip over the studs of the master cylinder. And we're just gonna put the nuts right back on. Now that I got the bracket on the Jeep, I gotta go ahead and get the bracket off the compressor. It's a 5/32 Allen wrench, and there's 4 bolts on the side. We're just gonna undo these so we get the plate mounted onto the mounting bracket that's on the Jeep. Then from there, we're gonna make some adjustments. So now the kit comes with your mounting hardware. It's just some 10 mil nuts and bolts. So we're gonna get this plate thrown on there. So I'm gonna be mounting the compressor front to back like this. So one thing that I need to make sure is that when I'm putting the bracket on for the compressor, that I make sure that the isolator pads are front to back. Just gonna drop that in there. Now we're gonna go ahead and get our hardware in. All right, I got that bracket all tightened up. Now I'm gonna place the compressor in. I'm gonna make sure that the filter's facing forward. So we got the little cap for where the filter's gonna go. And I'm just gonna throw these in there and snug them up. Now that I got that all tightened up, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna move the compressor by sliding it, like I'm gonna rotate it over. That way I can get the cylinder on the other side and have more room for all the solenoids. Now there's these 2 little Allen heads that clamp down on the center section. And all we're gonna do is just loosen both of those a little bit. And then the whole pump will actually rotate. Now I'm not gonna go too far. I just wanna have enough room for the 2 solenoids that are gonna be for the lockers. I'm just gonna snug those clamp nuts back up. Now, the next thing that we got to do is the cylinder in the center. We're going to have to roll this around so it faces the other way because I want my air lines and all my wiring to come in on this side. Now, there's a 10mm bolt on the side. We just got to loosen that. And what that's going to do is loosen the tension on the cylinder in the center. And we should be able to spin that over. Now I'm going to remove all the plugs. And we're gonna get the solenoids installed. Now this is just 1/8 inch Allen head plugs. And then once you get these out, you just throw them away. And then we're gonna go ahead and pull these little red plugs as well. Now the front is for the filter. Just gonna spin that on real quick. I already have everything Teflon taped, so I got all the valves and the solenoids. Like all the different fittings are already taped, so I can just go ahead and throw them in. Now, One thing to note, the port all the way on the front of the housing on the black section is actually larger. This is where you're going to want your pressure switch as well as your chuck for your air line. Now, I'm going to do that last. I'm actually going to rotate this back up so I can fit the solenoids on for the lockers. And I'm going to get those on before I do the air chuck and the T-valve. Or fitting, I mean. Okay, so now I'm just going to face this one up. There we go. Now that we got that on, we're just going to go ahead and put the T fitting on here. This is where our pressure switch is gonna get put onto. It should be 19 mil. I'm just going to tighten this on now. So I'm gonna actually go off the top of the T fitting for the pressure switch. I'm gonna lean it back just that way I know it's not gonna hit the hood or anything like that. It is pretty tall with the wiring and everything, so I'm gonna tighten it till it leans back. That looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten my pressure switch in. Now I might turn that a little bit more. The pressure switch is a 25 millimeter wrench. I'm going to tighten this cylinder down so it stops wiggling around on me, so I can tighten it a little bit easier. There we go. Now, none of this stuff needs to be super tightened down. Like, you just want to get it snugged in there pretty good. Just make sure you got a good seal, but you don't want to crank on it and break any of the fittings or anything. Okay, so now that that's on there, we'll put the air chuck on. Now that should be the 19 millimeter again as well. All right, there we go. So now the other reason I chose this location for the air chuck is because they make a relocation kit, or you could like make your own with some fittings. But I'm actually going to move this later on as a later project. I'm going to move this down, and I'm going to route a line down up into the front of the grill. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and loosen the cylinder again and rotate the solenoids down into place where I want them to be. That'll be good. Last thing I gotta do is get this wired up. So we're just gonna take the battery side and get it kind of unraveled. Now we're just gonna throw the battery side towards that end. And then there's a bundle of plugs right here. We want these to be at the compressor, and then the thinner wire that's super long at the end, this is actually for the switches. There's one more that's going to be for the relay. I'm wanting to set it right over here in the corner next to the brake relay. Next to the brake reservoir, so that way I can get the relay mounted up on the side over here. So now the first plug that I'm going to worry about is going to be these two right here. They're going to be for the pressure switch. So I'm just going to pop those on. Doesn't matter which color goes on which side of the switch. Now from there, you see the larger one with the black and red, that's gonna be for the motor, and that's coming out of the bottom over here. So it's kind of in an awkward spot. Just gonna fish that in. All right, so now that that's snapped together, we've got these other two. Now, the one's gonna be for your front and the other one's gonna be for your rear locker. Now, all that really matters is which one you're planning on wiring at the other end. So you just have to remember which one. So we're just gonna go ahead and get it snapped into the plug. Now I want it to route down and under. So I'm just gonna pull the harness over enough to where it'll fit in kind of the general area where I want it to be. Now that I got all that snapped together, now I'm going to start routing it across. Now that I got everything routed, I just need to make sure that I have enough wire left over. We're just going to snip off the excess. So I'm going to give myself a little extra, but clean it up by cutting it down. So now we just got to untape this and we're just going to put some new ends on it. Now the kit comes with ends for these wires. I don't like them. You could use them. They're just fine. I would definitely put some like shrink tube on them. But I have some other connectors that I'm going to use that already have the shrink tubing on it. So just going to get some of this tape that they have on it pulled back so we can get all that put together. Now there's 3 wires, and the way they did this is there's a ground that's for the switches that's separate, and then you have your main ground for the compressor and your solenoids. That's the larger black. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to tie the black and white small wire and the large black wire together. Actually, I had that backwards, sorry. The large black with white stripe and the small black wire, we're gonna tie those together. So I'm gonna get these stripped back. All right, now we're gonna go back over to the relay box and we're gonna go ahead and tie this in. So now the way the ARB has it, they send you with this little harness that's for the switches. So if you were going to do like your own little pod or whatever inside, you were going to run these wires, the wires from that main harness inside your Jeep and do the switches that they provide, maybe in like your own little, whatever pod that's mounted wherever. This will work. The one downside that I want to point out with this harness is that in this harness, they have it wired in a specific way that you have to run your rear locker in order for your front locker to get power. Now, my switch pod comes with, it's got a remote relay box. So with it having that, I don't need this at all. And what that's also going to allow me to do is wire it in a way that I'll be able to turn on my front locker without my rear locker being on, which in my opinion is just a little bit better setup. That way you can kind of have a little bit more control. So like I said, I'm not going to be using this harness, but that's one thing to keep in mind with this harness is that's one issue with this. There's ways of rerouting it so that way you don't have that issue. It's just something you have to be aware of. So now, before I do that though, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that everything here is kind of fed where I'm going to be able to put that relay up on the side of the wheel well here where I want it. And there's this wire fed through. So just want to make sure that we have enough room, and we do. Now again, we're just gonna cut enough to make sure that there's enough to get in there and get everything wired the way it needs to be. Then we're just gonna strip back some of the electrical tape that they have on it and get it fed inside the box. All right, now hopefully you guys can see okay. But the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get this relay mounted. Now, all I gotta do is snap it in, and we're just gonna tie it into that grounding prong or stud. All right, there's that. Now, let's go ahead and route the switch wires into my relay box. Now I got to go ahead and get it untaped. And what we're looking for right now is we're just going to look for the red and the black wire. The red wire is going to be it's going to be what controls the compressor. So that's what's going to kick the compressor on and off. Now, the yellow and green are going to be those are going to be what control your solenoids for your front and your rear locker. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you wire it to at this point. It would if you're using the ARB harness, because with theirs, they have it wired a specific way, like I said, so it's going to matter which one is which. But with the way that I'm doing it directly this way, it's going to be up to me which color is what, and I'll figure it out once I get the lockers installed and get them plumbed to the solenoids. So I'll make that decision then. I'll probably just throw it on there and just not worry about it. But what I'm going to end up having to do, since there's only one ground wire in this harness, is I'm actually going to have to daisy chain the ground wire. So what I'm going to do is use some of the extra black wire, and I'm just going to jumper from the switch 1 to switch 2 to switch 3, because those are going to be my 3 switches that are going to control my locker, my compressor, and then my rear locker. So that's the plan for that. It's just going to be easier than trying to, pigtail the ground wire. There's just no need for that. Now for me on my pod, switch 1 is going to be my front locker. So I'm just going to designate the yellow wire as the front solenoid, or the front locker. And my number 2 switch is actually my compressor switch. So I have to get the red wire onto that one. Okay, so now I'm just going to tuck that up, get that box closed back up, and we're going to go ahead and kick it on and see if the compressor works. All right, guys, well, that's it for this video. Hopefully it helps some of you guys out. Make sure you like, subscribe, comments down below if you have any questions or suggestions. I always love getting back to everybody that messages me. Hope you guys have a great one. Until the next time.